Hello again everyone from Tokyo, Japan, and welcome back to Japan Vintage Camera, where today I'm going to be talking about a really cool camera which I just acquired and looking at right now. It probably doesn't look like the most beautiful camera which you've ever seen. It's kind of beat up and dented and scratched, and a lot of the paint is missing on it. For those of you who are familiar with cameras, you'll probably recognize this as a Nikon. I'm going to use the American pronunciation here since I'm an American. A Nikon F2 SLR camera with what is known as the plane or eye level prism. Those of you who have sharper eyes will probably recognize this as a titanium model. And it's kind of obvious that it's titanium because you can see the titanium metal underneath. Most of the black paint cameras, 99% of them are just painted over brass, and when the paint comes off you have this nice shiny yellow brass underneath. The titanium, you just end up with this dull titanium colored model. There's nothing so unique about this camera. I reviewed one of these a few years ago, probably several years ago, the Nikon F2 Titanium camera, which was my own personal camera which I carried for a number of years. And as often happens, someone made me an offer on that camera I couldn't refuse, so I parted ways with it. And I really regretted getting rid of that camera because I really enjoyed using it. And it was nice having a really tough, rugged, and strong camera, something you don't have to worry about dropping or beating or smacking against another camera or hitting a fence or a rock or something like that when you're out hiking or climbing or whatever. And so I kind of kept my eyes open for another one. And I looked for a long time, and as time has gone by, these cameras of course climbed in value, and even the ugly beat up ones like this have gotten quite expensive. And so I think I kind of resigned myself to not getting another one, but as it happens I did, and here it is. And the interesting thing about this camera isn't so much the camera itself, but how I acquired it. So for those of you who have lived in Japan, and some of you who have spent time here, you may be familiar with the method of getting rid of rubbish in Japan. It's not as easy as it is in other places. Here in Japan, you have to kind of separate everything. We have to separate our trash into like 5 different piles. We have burnable trash, non-burnable trash, which is plastic trays and wrappers and things like that. And we have plastic bottles, metal cans, and then glass bottles. And we have to separate these things into different bins to be picked up. And each type gets picked up on a certain day, so it's kind of confusing. And if you want to throw away anything which isn't conventional trash, like you want to throw away a television or a rice cooker or an old toaster oven or stuff like that, you have to go to a convenience store or city office and buy a thing which is like a tax stamp. And, you know, depending on what you're throwing away, if it's something like an exercise set, you know, a Thigh Master that you never used, or you're throwing away a king-size bed, you have to go and buy these stickers, and you put them on whatever you're throwing away. And then on the particular day that they pick these up, you haul it outside, and, you know, they'll check the sticker and they'll take it away. So one day I was walking out to the convenience store to get myself some coffee. And convenience store coffee is pretty good here. And I noticed this guy putting out a box of stuff which had old camera equipment in it. I didn't see any cameras in the box, but I could see stuff like there were a couple of small tripods and flash wires and things like that. And what caught my eye inside the box were these Fuji 35mm film containers, which are about this big. And you put your 35mm film canisters inside, and these are for traveling, and they make your film X-ray proof. So I thought that might be really handy to have, and so I asked him if I could you know, have them out of the box. And he said he didn't really want to get rid of anything out of the box, but if I wanted the whole box of everything, I would just, you know, give him the 400 yen that he spent on the sticker to discard it. So I gave him the 400 yen, and I brought the box home. And as I was going through it to see what kind of goodies there were inside, I found this camera laying on the bottom. Now, it's not often that you find an F2 Titanium SLR camera for any kind of price, let alone 400 yen, but that's what I got. And you know, to say I was quite happy was an understatement. I was thinking of buying another one and spending perhaps as much as $1,000 for a rather beat up one, so I could at least have one again to shoot, use with my Nikon lenses. And I came across this one. And the interesting thing about it is that it still works. And that's the wonderful thing about these cameras, is that they are remarkably durable, and things seldom go wrong with them. There are some issues which they sometimes have, but generally they're very solid and well-made cameras. And there are many people around who still specialize in repairing these. Now, I was thinking of repairing this camera myself, but a friend of mine happens to run a Nikon service center in Shinagawa. And so I'm going to take the camera to him and have him go through it. And they are the official, I guess, Nikon place for film cameras. And if you go to the Nikon Camera Center in Shinjuku, the Nikon Cafe, as they call it, in the L building across from the west side of Shinjuku Station, if you go there as a tourist, you can bring your digital camera in there, and they'll do a quick sensor cleaning and stuff like that on it, for free or for a small charge. But anything which is manual focus or film, they refer to this other place in Shinagawa. And they do wonderful work there. So hopefully next week I'll be able to take this over there and drop it off and get it serviced. So why titanium? So why did Nikon make a titanium version of the F2? This was kind of a thing in the 70s and 80s. Titanium was kind of like the new wonder metal, the new wonder material for making things out of. It kind of started in photography, if you can believe that, camera bodies and things like that. And then it eventually moved to other things like bicycle frames and sunglasses and stuff like that. And there were a number of companies in Japan who were making titanium model cameras. Of course, there's the Olympus OM4 titanium, the OM3 titanium. There was the Minolta A9 titanium, and so on. And it was just one of these, probably more of a marketing gimmick than anything. But when it came to the F2, this was one camera which could really benefit with the titanium construction, because this camera was used by so many working professional photographers in really rough environments. And this camera was a favorite of National Geographic and other photographers who went to far and away and rugged places. It was built like a tank. It's fully mechanical. It doesn't need any batteries to operate. Just put a lens on it, and if you're an experienced photographer, you don't need a stinking light meter or anything like that. You can you know how to operate the camera just using your eye. And these cameras were quite popular, but there was an issue with them, and that is that they were kind of fragile. Now, not fragile structurally, but fragile cosmetically, and especially when it comes to the black painted cameras. Now, these were available, the F2, in a chrome-plated camera and a black-painted camera. And for some reason, the black cameras, the ones which professionals prefer to use, were very fragile. And it was very easy to knock dents in the corners on the top and into the prism. This usually, 99% of the time, had no effect on the operation. You could dent or bend up the camera as much as you wanted and it would still work, but it made it look ugly. Now, the interesting thing about the titanium is it's very much stronger and it's very dent resistant. And this camera's been dropped hard a few times, I can tell by looking at it, but the amount of cosmetic damage other than the paint being rubbed off is quite minimal. Now, you can drop one of these cameras on top of the prism and it'll just leave a small mark. It won't collapse the prism cover like it will on the black painted ones. The chrome ones are more durable because the chrome adds a little bit of extra thickness to the body material. And if you want a camera and you don't want to spend a couple $3,000 for a Nikon F2 Titanium, the chrome one is the next best thing. It might be shinier, it may not be, if you like the black cameras, it may not look so sexy, but I think nowadays the silver color is more popular anyway. That's probably the best bet. But if you want the toughest, the most durable, the most rugged of any 35mm camera, you really can't beat the Nikon F2 Titanium. The interesting thing about this camera is, though it's titanium, everything, all the original accessories work on this. You can use the photomic finders, and photomic is kind of a funny Nikon word, but it's just a finder which has a built-in light meter. That way you don't have to carry a handheld light meter, and you don't have to guess, you know, your exposure settings in your head. Other accessories, this accepts the original flash accessories, the cable releases, the motor drives. The F2 was the first camera which came with a really reliable motor drive, and of course those attach on here quite easily. And you know, it's just as useful as and accessorizable as the original one. And what I really like is, you know, I saw this guy set up one of these F2 cameras, and he set it up with the aperture control ring. And what this does is you attach this apparatus to the front of the camera with a later model photomic viewfinder. And what it does is when you set the shutter speed at a certain speed, it gives you shutter priority automatic operation. And what happens is you set the shutter speed and the light meter reads the light, and this funny thing which bolts on the side turns the aperture ring to the desired aperture and gives you aperture or shutter priority automatic operation. It's really cool. And this guy here set one of these up with a motor drive and all this, and he put like a Star Wars figure, and it looked just like some kind of, you know, prop that they would have used from the movie Star Wars. And I thought that I would like to make something, a camera that looked like that, but unfortunately these EE controls for these cameras are hard to find. They use a unique battery, they seldom work, and so I decided, nah, if I'm going to shoot one of these, you know, just keep it simple, stupid. Just, you know, this is pretty much all I need in order to take good photographs. So yeah, that's it for this camera. I hope you're interested in the story about this F2 titanium camera and how I found it. This is not the only really cool thing which I found for a really good price. On one of the local auction sites here in Japan, I came across a 50mm f1.4 Nikon lens. And these things are like a dime a dozen in Japan, the standard 50mm lens. And the guy had only one photograph of it from the front. And as soon as I saw it, I knew it wasn't an SLR lens. I knew it was a rangefinder lens. And I ended up, I think, spending 4,000 yen for it, plus 750 yen shipping. And it was a Millennium Nikkor 50mm f1.4 lens, which, you know, sells for like $1,000 or more. So that's the second best deal I've gotten after this. I wish I could say that I got deals like this all the time. Unfortunately, that seldom happens. But a friend of mine has gotten me beat when it comes to the best finds of all times. He's a guy who deals in musical instruments, and he was called out to this guy's house who was selling his father's old guitars. And there were a bunch of old electric guitars in this house, and the guy was saying, yeah, I want 10,000 yen for each of these other guitars, and I want 20,000 yen, which nowadays is about $170 for this one. And this one guitar was a 1958 Gibson Les Paul. And you can imagine how, you know, these things are ungodly expensive nowadays, but my friend picked it up for 20,000 yen. So that's something I really wish I could come across, but I'm not in the guitar business, so I'll stick with cameras. But yeah, sometimes you find really good deals, and I'm really happy to have found this one. But anyway, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe. If you like it, please click the like button. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you tune in again soon.